I stared at the email on my screen, my hands shaking slightly as I processed its contents. After 3 years of waiting, watching, and gathering evidence, everything was finally falling into place. The forensic accountants had traced every penny Rebecca had stolen, documenting a trail of fraud that led straight to my stepmother's designer-clad doorstep. My name is Alexandra Chen, and at 34, I was about to expose the woman who had stolen not just millions from my father's company, but also his trust in his final days. Ms. Chen. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Harrison is here with the final report. Send him in, Sarah, I replied, straightening my spine and smoothing down my blazer. James Harrison had been my father's corporate attorney for 20 years before Rebecca forced him out. Now he was my strongest ally in exposing the truth. He entered my office carrying a thick leather briefcase, his expression grim but satisfied. It's worse than we thought, Alex, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. The numbers go back further than we initially suspected. She's been embezzling since before your father's diagnosis. I wasn't surprised. Rebecca had always been calculating, it's what had attracted my father to her in the first place. She was his CFO before she became his wife, joining Chen Industries during its expansion into international markets. I was just finishing business school when they married, and at first, I'd been happy for him. My mother had passed away when I was young, and Dad deserved to find love again. What a fool I'd been. Show me, I said, reaching for the report James was pulling from his briefcase. The numbers told a story that made my blood boil. Systematic theft disguised as legitimate business expenses, offshore accounts hidden behind layers of shell companies, and falsified reports that had been used to convince my father I was the one stealing from the company. I remembered that day with painful clarity. I'd been working late, reviewing acquisition proposals in my office, when security appeared at my door. Rebecca stood behind them, her face a mask of false concern as she explained that suspicious transactions had been traced to my department. I'm so sorry, Robert, she told my father, who sat pale and weak in his wheelchair. But the evidence is clear. Alexandra has been embezzling funds for months. I tried to defend myself, to explain that the transactions were fabricated, but the cancer had left Dad too weak to investigate himself. He trusted Rebecca to handle the business while he focused on his treatment. And Rebecca, playing the role of devoted wife and steward of his legacy, used that trust to destroy me. I expected better from you, Dad had said, his voice barely a whisper. You're no longer welcome at Chen Industries. Or in this family. Those were the last words he ever spoke to me. He passed away 2 months later, leaving everything to Rebecca. The company, the family estate, even my mother's jewelry, all of it went to the woman who had orchestrated my downfall. The overseas accounts are the key, James was saying, pulling me back to the present. She thought she'd hidden them well, but she made mistakes. Got sloppy with the transfers. I nodded, flipping through the report. And the board? They'll have no choice but to act once they see this. The evidence is irrefutable. I closed the folder, a plan forming in my mind. Schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Don't tell them why, just say it's urgent. James raised an eyebrow. You ready to move on this? I've been ready for 3 years, I replied, standing to look out over the city skyline. She took everything from me, James. My father's trust, my place in the company, my reputation. Tomorrow, she learns what that cost her. After James left, I pulled up the surveillance photos my private investigators had gathered over the past year. Rebecca at luxury boutiques, spending money stolen from my father's company. Rebecca with her much younger boyfriend at exclusive resorts, living it up while my father's legacy crumbled. Rebecca at high society events, playing the grieving widow while systematically dismantling everything Dad had built. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister Jennifer. Are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back. Jennifer had been my rock through all of this. While I worked to gather evidence against Rebecca, she kept up appearances, staying close to our stepmother to monitor her activities. It couldn't have been easy, pretending to believe Rebecca's lies, but Jennifer had played her part perfectly. I'm sure, I texted back. Be ready for tomorrow. That evening, I went through my father's old files one last time. After being forced out of the company, I'd managed to copy key documents before security escorted me out. Hidden among routine business papers were notes about inconsistencies Dad had noticed before his illness, questions about financial reports that Rebecca had smoothly explained away. He'd started to suspect something was wrong, but by then the cancer had progressed too far. Rebecca took advantage of his weakened state, using his trust in her to turn him against me. It was brilliant, in a twisted way. By accusing me first, she diverted attention from her own theft. But she'd underestimated me. She thought that by destroying my relationship with Dad, by taking my inheritance and my place in the company, she'd broken me. Instead, she'd created an enemy with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Tomorrow, Rebecca would learn exactly what that meant. The next morning, I arrived at Chen Industries for the first time in 3 years. The security guards did a double take when I walked through the lobby. No doubt Rebecca had kept my photo on some kind of watch list. But the temporary board access pass clipped to my blazer prevented them from stopping me. Alex. Jennifer was waiting by the elevators, looking elegant but tense in her executive suit. As chief marketing officer, she'd managed to maintain her position despite Rebecca's takeover. She's already here. In Dad's old office. Of course she was. Rebecca had moved into our father's corner office the day after his funeral, claiming it was what he would have wanted. Perfect, I said as we stepped into the elevator. Is everything ready? Jennifer nodded. The board members are all here. And I've made sure IT has everything they need for the presentation. The executive floor was exactly as I remembered it, all gleaming wooden glass, with Chen Industries awards and achievements displayed prominently on the walls. My heels clicked against the marble floors as we made our way to the boardroom, each step bringing me closer to the moment I'd spent 3 years preparing for. Through the glass walls, I could see Rebecca holding court at the head of the table. She'd kept up appearances well, designer suit, perfectly styled hair, Dad's wedding ring still prominently displayed on her hand. She froze mid-sentence when she saw me, her carefully maintained composure slipping for just a moment. What is she doing here? She demanded as Jennifer and I entered the room. The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, glancing between us. I called this meeting. I said calmly, taking a seat directly across from her. Don't worry, Rebecca. All your questions will be answered soon. Before she could respond, James entered with his team of forensic accountants. They began distributing thick folders to each board member while James connected his laptop to the presentation screen. What is this? Rebecca's voice had an edge of panic now. I didn't authorize any presentation. No, said Malcolm Chen, my father's cousin and the longest-serving board member. But I did. Please continue, Alexandra. I stood, facing the board members I'd known since childhood. 3 years ago, I was accused of stealing from this company. Those accusations were false, a smokescreen to hide the real theft that was taking place. The presentation began, displaying financial records, bank transfers, and documented evidence of Rebecca's systematic embezzlement. The board members' expressions shifted from confusion to shock to anger as the extent of her crimes became clear. This is ridiculous, Rebecca sputtered, her face flushing. These documents are clearly fabricated. She's trying to frame me, just like she tried to steal from the company before. The documents are authentic, James stated firmly. Every transaction has been verified by independent auditors. The evidence shows that over the past 5 years, Mrs. Chen has embezzled approximately $47 million through a complex network of offshore accounts and shell companies. Rebecca's eyes darted around the room, looking for allies, but finding none. Even her most loyal supporters on the board couldn't ignore the evidence in front of them. If you'll turn to page 23, I continued, my voice steady, you'll see documentation of how Mrs. Chen used these stolen funds. Luxury properties, private jets, expensive gifts for her boyfriend, all purchased with money taken from Chen Industries. Boyfriend, someone muttered. Rebecca's face went pale. Yes, Jennifer chimed in, pulling up photographs on the screen. Marco DeSantis, age 32. They've been together for at least 2 years, while Rebecca was still supposedly grieving our father. The pictures told their own story, Rebecca and her much younger lover at exclusive resorts, on private yachts, living lavishly on stolen money. Each image was time-stamped, providing a clear timeline of her betrayal. This is just the beginning, I said, turning to face Rebecca directly. The FBI has been provided with all of this evidence. They are particularly interested in the international wire transfers and tax evasion. Rebecca stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This meeting is over. I won't sit here and listen to these lies. Sit down, Rebecca, Malcolm ordered, his voice hard. You're not going anywhere. Rebecca sank back into her chair, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. The boardroom was silent except for the sound of pages turning as members reviewed the evidence. There's more, I said, nodding to James. He pulled up a new set of documents on the screen. These are the original reports Rebecca showed my father, the ones she used to accuse me of theft. Our forensic team has proven they were fabricated. I walked around the table, placing a USB drive in front of each board member. You'll find the complete analysis here, showing how she manipulated the data to frame me. She took advantage of my father's illness, knowing he was too weak to investigate properly. How dare you, Rebecca hissed, but her voice trembled. Robert trusted me. He knew what you were. Did he? I turned to face her. Or did you make sure he only saw what you wanted him to see? While you were destroying my relationship with him, you were systematically looting the company he spent his life building. Malcolm cleared his throat. I've seen enough. As acting chairman of the board, I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in Rebecca Chen's leadership. All in favor. Hands rose around the table. Rebecca watched, her face ashen, as her power was stripped away in seconds. Furthermore, Malcolm continued, I move to reinstate Alexandra Chen to her rightful position as heir to Chen Industries, as per Robert's original succession plan before. He glanced at Rebecca with disgust. Certain influences changed his mind. The vote was unanimous. You can't do this, Rebecca said, but her voice had lost its authority. I'm his widow. I have rights. Your rights, James interjected, will be determined by the courts. The FBI is waiting downstairs to discuss your creative accounting practices. As if on cue, 2 agents appeared at the boardroom door. I watched as they led Rebecca away, her designer heels stumbling slightly on the polished floor. The woman who had seemed so powerful, so untouchable just hours ago, now looked small and desperate. Wait, I called after her. She turned, hope flickering in her eyes. I want you to have this. I handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter my father had written years ago, before Rebecca entered our lives. In it, he expressed his pride in me, his hopes for my future leadership of the company. She read it, her hands shaking. He loved me, she whispered. No, I replied softly. He loved who you pretended to be. There's a difference. After she was gone, the board members filed out, leaving me alone with Jennifer and James. The 3 of us stood in silence, absorbing the magnitude of what had just happened. Dad would be proud, Jennifer said, squeezing my hand. I nodded, walking to the window of what had once been our father's office. The city stretched out below, just as it had on countless evenings when I'd stood here with him, learning about the business he'd built from nothing. Over the next few weeks, the story dominated business news. Rebecca's arrest, the scope of her fraud, the dramatic boardroom confrontation, it was the kind of corporate scandal that journalists dream about. But I stayed focused on what mattered, rebuilding Chen Industries. The company had suffered under Rebecca's leadership, but the foundation my father built was strong. With the stolen funds recovered and proper management restored, we began to turn things around. 1 year later, I stood at the podium during our annual shareholders meeting, delivering news of record profits and expanding markets. The company wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. After the meeting, I found a letter in my office. It was from Rebecca, sent from federal prison where she was serving a 15-year sentence. She wrote of regret, of shame, of hoping for forgiveness. I didn't respond. Some betrayals go too deep for forgiveness. Instead, I focused on honoring my father's legacy. The photo of him that Rebecca had removed from the office was back in its place. Next to it, I added a new one, Dad and me at my college graduation, both of us smiling, full of hopes for the future. Jennifer joined me for dinner that evening at our favorite restaurant. As we shared a bottle of wine, she raised her glass in a toast. To Dad, she said. And to justice finally served. I clinked my glass against hers, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. Rebecca had thought she'd won, that she'd successfully stolen not just money, but my father's trust and my rightful place in the company. She never understood that some things can't be stolen, like the truth, or the determination of a daughter to clear her name and protect her father's legacy. The company was back where it belonged, in the hands of those who would honor its founder's vision. And Rebecca? She had plenty of time to think about her choices from behind prison walls. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone, it's about patiently waiting for justice to reveal the truth they tried to hide. As for me, I was just getting started. Chen Industries had a bright future ahead, and I intended to make my father proud.